Going live, going live, going live. Boom! According to that, I am live. Welcome. This is Tokyo Tonight. My name is Hiko Simon. I'm here every week at 10:30 p.m. Japan Standard Time because I have nowhere else to go and nothing better to do. Good to see you all. Sorry for the some setup issues. I sort of used a different cable to plug in my mic, and I had to reattach it and do all that sort of thing. One thing during the week. I found out that there is actually a service. A few years ago, so I was looking myself at just using the audio from this. Some people wanted to just listen to this as an audio thing that they could do on their jogs or whatever. And I was looking at podcast options, but most podcast options, it was weird to me. With YouTube, with video, of course, you can post videos as long as you like on YouTube. For free and unlimited storage and everything. Of course, that's YouTube's whole sort of business model. So you could do that with these enormous multi-gigabyte files on YouTube, but you couldn't do that just with audio, which should be easier, right? But obviously, so many people pirating music and doing stuff like that, that for whatever reason, the same sort of option wasn't available. And somebody during the week asked me the same thing. They said, "Hey, why don't you have a podcast version of the show that they can just listen to?" And I said, yeah, I've tried, looked a few times and never found a good, free, easy option that works the same as YouTube. And someone said, check out Anchor. So I checked out Anchor, and it appears that Anchor works. I tried it out. I just dropped the video file. I didn't even rip out the audio. I just dropped the MP4 from YouTube into Anchor, and yeah, the sound came out. I found the way that you could trim the audio just to cut out all the sort of chatter and so on in the beginning. It worked really well. So for those of you who want to know, I think the video is in the information is in the video information to this video. In fact, there it is. The link is down below. So if you ever want to catch this show, I do like actually seeing the comments and the views and all the data coming in on the video. But at the end of the day, if you want to catch up on this during the week and check this out as an audio version, to me, it's actually kind of cool. And to try to make this knowing that it will become an audio version where I'll also try to make it a little bit more editable. Yeah, I think that's pretty cool. So check it out. I now have, for now, I'm trying out putting up, in addition to this video version where you just look at my face and the links. For now, you can check out an all audio version. I'll try to be a little bit more descriptive, I guess, of the things that I'm talking about so that you know. But I thought that was pretty cool. So link below if you want to follow. Anchor is, I believe, part of Spotify. So if you want to follow, yeah, my audio is a Spotify podcast. You can do that. We'll see how that goes anyway. I'm not sure if there's like a volume restriction or if I have to delete like last week's episode. Given that I'm talking about news, I guess I don't need to have a whole archive of every single one. And you've got the YouTube channel for that anyway. But certainly, yeah, I'll just keep adding videos. I won't be able to do it right after the show because it takes a few hours for the MP4 version of this to come out. So it'll probably be on tomorrow morning my time, but still something cool if you are into that sort of thing. Let's jump into the comments, see who's with us today. Thanks everyone again for jumping in. And by the way, this is the portion I think I'll cut out of the audio version. That's what I did last week. So basically, I'll go straight from that intro to when I start to talk about the news. And I guess when I talk about the news or I'm reading the comments, I will actually take more care to read the comment out and describe what I'm looking at, not just flash it up on screen. So, yeah, but let's see who's in here. Already lots of people rocking in. In fact, let me change this from top chat to live chat just to make sure I get all of them. So, yeah, we've got Quint Rankid. Hi, all. Good to see you, Quint Rankid. One Johnson. Applause. We've got Sergeant Bilko, Quint, One Johnson, and all. Hello. We've got Aaron, moderator, as always. Fantastic to have you. The Sergeant Bilko. I just said the Sergeant Bilko, so that's okay. Japan Trail Cam, good evening. Good to have you in here, Japan Trail Cam. Kerberos Tenshi, good to see you. Never fear, CT is here. Not Shubis. Well, good to have one of the half not afraid anyway. Who else we got in here? Tech Squirrels again. Tech Squirrel Club. Assemble. At Avoid, good morning. Good to go. So glad. I do really appreciate how people in the States, for example, I know get up early for this, and I am glad to be doing that. By the way, I did notice on the video last week, Tech Squirrel, that I think this HDMI capture does have a slight offset from the audio, and I've just tried something. I've tried correcting it. I've tried just offsetting 3 milliseconds. We'll see if that works. Hopefully my lips will be a little bit more in sync. It wasn't that noticeable, but it was there. So anyway, I just did that. We'll see how that goes. Yeah, we've got DJ Sunny Side Up just made an hour-long loop of the Godzilla scream sound into a happy birthday song. Okay, I'm gonna have a look at that after this video. Good to see you, DJ Sunny Side Up. Hope that you're well. Demaster, good to see you indeed. Hey, glad to be with you again. Hope I had a nice day. I did have a nice day. Thank you for asking. I hope that you had a nice day, Demaster. And good to have you in here. We've got Boom from Odie Jr. Great to see you. Flashing, not that kind of flashing, Mr. Cordy Chap. No, not that kind of a show. That's on my OnlyFans. Black Tengu, g'day. Good to see you. G'day, Black Tengu. Always throws me how the Greek representative greets me in my native tongue, or at least my Australian. People do say g'day in New Zealand as well, but it's really more of an Australian expression. But good to see you. G'day indeed. As always, if you're in the comments, do say hello. It's always nice to know that you're out there and I am not just speaking into the void, although I can see that as always. It's great to see you all. My sound sync seems worse this week, says Quint Ranked. Okay, you know what? I'm going to try a tech thing on the fly. Let me know if this improves things or makes it worse. Otherwise, if it makes it worse, I will know to take the setting completely off. So let me try this. You know, whenever I make on the fly tech changes on the show, it always goes really well. So I'm very confident about this. Boom. Let's do that. Okay, whatever I did before the show, I just made it 10 times. So either this is going to make it better or worse. I just did a sync offset. I increased it from 3 milliseconds to 30 milliseconds. We'll see. Anyway, this is the time to do that. I guess I'll take one more minute of breathing before we get into the topics. Anyone else there? 14 concurrent viewers I see and 8 likes. So nice to see. Approximately 60% of the audience does seem to like the video. I will work for those other 6 likes. Remember, if you do like the video, please do like it. It helps the channel, and of course I'm doing this basically for likes and peanuts, so I do appreciate that. Oh, you know what? I've just realized I've got to open up the actual magazine there. Yeah, anyway, I am curious. Is the audio more? Is that more out of sync or less out of sync? Hopefully that corrected it. We'll see. It's a kung fu dub, says Mr. Cordy Chap. Does that mean that it's worse? If it's worse, I'm just going to take off that setting right now before I go any further. I guess it won't make a difference if you're listening to this on the podcast, but yeah, it does make me slightly tempted to put on the iPhone version of this, of the camera, like I showed last week. Like, that was pretty good, but anyway, let's stick with this for a bit. We'll see how it goes. I'm always trying to 2 steps backwards and 1 step forward. If there is no more comments, I am going to just jump into it. So let's get started. Not perfect, but better. Oh, that's interesting one, Johnson. Thank you for that. Okay, contradictory feedback. Some people saying it's better, some saying it's worse. It might just also be a thing about how the live stream coming together, but okay, we'll take. Still pretty bad, says Quint Ranked. You know what? I actually put away the USB cam. I can't switch back to the normal one at the moment. Although this makes me feel like I should get out the USB cam and just go back to that. It's a shame because the video is so clear. I would love to get the audio in sync. Oh well, look. I'm sure my face isn't the attraction of this in the first place. Maybe if I just stick my mouth behind the microphone like this, then you'll not notice. We'll see. Let's keep the experiment going. Quint, if it's worse, I could just undo the delay setting. I must admit, I'm gonna do one more setting on this. I guess I'll come back at the end of the video and see myself how it changes. So don't mind me if I just do a clap test. That sounds like something else, doesn't it? Never mind. Just some penicillin should fix everything. Let's take the sync offset to 0. So I'll use that for later on to figure out what the offset is, and I will do that later. Okay, so let's start on the topics for this week anyway. And welcome to people who are listening to this as an audio podcast for the first time. I'll be amazed if anyone finds this, but it's a fun experiment. It's something I always wanted to do, so welcome. Before I get into the prepared topics, I mean, I guess the main situation is with COVID. The 7-day average is currently in Tokyo up to 7,500 people, which is 2.8 times what it was the week before. Which is bad, but the acceleration rate is less than last week, although 2.8 times is still pretty awful. So we just broke through, we got to 11,000 cases in Tokyo yesterday. Remember, this is for an administrative area with a population of 14 million people. Greater Tokyo is 35 million people, but there are multiple different prefectures. So, yeah, I suppose in comparison to some other places that have smaller populations and more cases, Japan is always doing a bit better, but at the same time, Japan is also starting later on this. Omicron started later. So given the 2.8 times per week acceleration rate, I mean, I think we are still, I don't know if things are easing off or they're getting worse, but I think you have to presume that things are going to keep going, which means that things are not good at the moment. So certainly I'm hearing more about people who know people who have it now, which is more than what was really happening before. So I guess this is the same all over the world at the moment. Everyone's in the same situation. Obviously, being vaccinated doesn't seem to stop you getting it. It does seem to lessen the effects. To tell you the truth, I'm not so afraid of getting it, but I am legitimately afraid of the after effects, hearing about long COVID and the effects. I mean, it's just such a weird thing, right? It has the symptoms that are like a cold, but everyone seems to basically have come to the conclusion that it's like a vascular disease. It causes like clots that can mess up your organs, they can mess up your sense of taste, they can mess up your brain. And that lasts for a long time, even if you have mild, symptoms. So it's not something I want to catch, which is why, I'm very glad I can continue working at home as I've been doing. I try to get out of the house and I jog a bit, but it's been going on for a long time, and I really did enjoy going back to the office. But yeah, I think the smart thing is that if you, wherever you are in whatever way that you can to take precautions, I don't think it's something that getting immune by catching it isn't really. I mean, even people who have caught it multiple times. And certainly when boosters come around, I will get that. But yeah, just pretty much sitting tight and watching at the moment. Again, it's not that good in Tokyo. In fact, I know people who have been waiting to get in who were optimistic. I was optimistic for them for a time. But obviously everything is on hold at the moment. And even though the logic of keeping Omicron out doesn't really hold anymore, obviously it's politically not going to make a lot of sense to suddenly open immigration right while the cases are spiking. So we'll see how it peaks and drops. We don't know. It's hard to tell whether the curve is going to ease off this week or it's just going to keep going. I know everyone else is in the same situation, so do take care wherever you are. But yeah, that's the situation in Tokyo. There's not a lot to report other than, of course, in spite of the low number of serious cases, there are so much fewer serious cases than previous waves. There are a lot more hospital occupancies, people in hospital for isolation or observation, and this is already causing problems with the medical system. The other thing is that people being forced into isolation is just causing staff shortages everywhere. So it's having effects in other ways, just through the sheer number of people that have it. So again, I know this is the case everywhere, and I know that Tokyo, if anything, is behind the loop of other similar cities globally, but it's happening here at the moment anyway. So yeah, it's pretty tough. So that is the general update. So into the comments for a moment. Koba's Tenshi says Sergeant Bilko Hikosaman needs to bring out that shoe line. Yes, I saw something about tech air shoes or something like that. Yeah, they would definitely make you run slower and change your mind and randomly change direction in the middle of running to a certain place. That's what they would do. There could be a market for that, I suppose. Unintentional fitness. Good to see more people rocking into the chat, by the way. Theodore Sharp. Oh dear, I'm sorry to hear that you got Omicron. I hope that the symptoms were mild and that you're not feeling the effects of it. I'm curious, actually. I mean, how was it? Was it heavy? And are you suffering after effects? Like I said, do take really good care of yourself. I hope that you're doing better. Iraq 299 evening. A bit late to the party. Apologies. COVID everywhere. Keep safe, everyone. Indeed. I mean, that's pretty much all there is to say on that. But yeah. Black Tengu, at least they can't blame foreigners with the Omicron surge. Oh, yes, they can. They totally are. They're blaming the US military that was letting people in without testing them, as Japan assumed that they were doing, because they were doing this even with Japanese people coming through. So there's a lot of blame being thrown at the US military. And they do share a big part of the blame, but they're not the sole blame, of course. Japanese people were bringing it into Tokyo. They weren't having camp clusters in Tokyo. So, yeah. Kerberos Tenshi saw a video on Instagram of one woman catching it 3 times. Once the original, once Delta, and once Omicron. Wow, it's like watching all of the prequels for Star Wars, only probably more enjoyable. Makes you wonder if she didn't learn from the experience. I don't know. I mean, getting sick isn't really, unless she was doing it on purpose. I don't think it's something you necessarily learn from. I can imagine a lot of people are in situations where, they work in jobs where and it could happen to a nurse. It could happen to people who just, school teachers, people who just have to work with other people. So, yeah, I think it's, you mustn't blame people for getting it. Like I say, unless they're deliberately seeking to get it and they're doing silly things like deliberately not getting vaccinated. Obviously, not getting vaccinated doesn't make a difference in this case. So, yeah, pretty tough for that lady getting it 3 times. But again, it shows that, I mean, I don't know. I really hope Theodore's okay. Very glad to hear that it was really mild and you're out of there. I hope it didn't affect your sense of taste or anything like that. Again, I'm just looking at people I know on Facebook talking about having had it, and they talk about that. I hope that's it. And in a way, you're really lucky. So, definitely take good care of that, and hope you recover soon. Into the next topic. So I actually just mentioned before, I've got the link below in the video information with the link to the new podcast. So definitely go and check that out. An interesting scandal of sorts. I don't know how many of you are into the Sanrio stuff, My Kitty, Kitty-chan, and all the various Sanrio characters. They're sort of the back dancers, as it were, the Bad Bats Maru, the Keropi, and I'm showing my age probably by the characters that I'm listing off, but My Melody, interesting one, sort of a rabbit version of Kitty-chan. Also interesting, I guess those of you who know a bit about the history, if any of you from the Netherlands might be familiar with the lawsuit by the creator of Miffy, who was upset at My Melody, which is basically like a rabbit version of Kitty-chan, which apparently just looked a little bit too much like Miffy. And they got a little bit miffed, as it were. That was a lawsuit that went on for a long time. And got settled. But My Melody apparently has a mother, and My Melody being popular with very small girls, the mother came out with sort of motherly advice for girls struggling with topics like boys being mean to them, and giving the advice, if the boys are being mean to you, it's okay, they just like you. And other useful advice, like the woman's biggest enemy is other women. And basically came out with a lot of weird advice to come from a mother to young girls that seemed really to have more the tone of an elderly male advertising executive really than what a mother would say. And apparently all of the My Melody middle-aged woman fans on Twitter became outraged, and there's a bit of a cancel My Melody. Apparently they did actually, literally, Sanrio took down they reacted by stopping sales of all My Melody goods. They literally cancelled My Melody when her mum told women that the enemy of other women are women. To which the mostly male-dominated Japanese internet space responded, "Oh, look, you see, that's the proof." All the feminists reacting to My Melody, they are the biggest enemy of women. But the point that they were making is it looked pretty much like a chauvinistic version of myself, with probably about 20 years extra on top, was giving advice as if I was like a mother giving girls advice. So My Melody cancelled for sounding too much like an Osang giving weird advice, telling women not to trust other women. What can you do? Back into the comments. Going through Lysander 45, good to see you. The US military were very dastardly to get around to each major city of Japan before returning to Okinawa. Yes, they were indeed. And exactly, that's the point. That, yes. I mean, well, look, Okinawa, Yamaguchi, and Hiroshima have terrible community cases, which did follow there being significant US base outbreaks in those prefectures. So, yeah, you can't exactly pass the buck on that in those locations, but certainly nationwide, no, it's clearly not just them. And it clearly, whether it got in through 200 Marines in Camp Kansen, as I will now call it, in Okinawa, or whether it came in through two returning Japanese government bureaucrats at Haneda, it's in and it's spreading, and there's 11,000 people per day, and that's not the US military, at least not in total. They're part of it, but for the, yeah, it's obviously ridiculous blaming it all on them. Again, weird, Russian chatbot. Welcome to the chat. Always good to see. Do not throw, do not throw vodka to the bears. Yeah, that was a thing. This was my tweet response to Dogen. Dogen tweeted out that he is now permanently Joseph. He's finally got his permanent residency. I don't know the full story between the journey to how he got permanent residence. I know he's been here for more than 10 years, I think. And I understand from looking at a video he posted on YouTube today that he'd possibly applied more than once and not gotten it, which is weird to me. Although I didn't want to, I'd heard of people applying and not getting it, so I didn't want to take any chances. So I paid an immigration consultant to actually make sure my paperwork was in order. It just seemed to me it was worth the investment for that. But yeah, he got it. And congratulations for those who are interested. What is permanent residence? Permanent residence is like a green card. I don't know if I guess now people nowadays don't really know the movie Green Card anymore. There was a movie in the 80s that was kind of popular for a time. Gerard Depardieu played a French person in a fake marriage, sort of in an immigration scheme where like struggling students would help create like a fake history and have fake marriages to help certain immigrants who would pay money to basically get green cards to the US. And the spoiler alert, they don't get along, but it's basically transactional. It's for college money and whatever, and they sort of fake having a relationship, and they're being interviewed by immigration. And in the course, of preparing and setting up a fake relationship, of course, they actually fall in love. Yeah, very illegal. They ended up in jail in the movie, as I'm sure some people who got ideas from the movie also ended up. Doesn't work that way in Japan. You don't have to have fake ski vacation photos shot on the roof of your building. And to remember the brand of shampoo, that you don't get that kind of a test for a green card in Japan. You just have to fill out some forms. There's a lot of paperwork, but it's a lot more mundane. Like most procedures in Japan, marriage, divorce, green cards, it's all very, very straightforward. But what do you get from it? Well, basically, of course, permanent residency rights, they give you various rights in different countries. And a lot of countries, like, for example, in New Zealand, permanent residency gives you almost citizenship rights. You can vote. In fact, I can't vote. I've been away from New Zealand for 3 years, but permanent residents who have been in New Zealand resident for more than 3 years, it's like a rotating door. They don't need citizenship and they can vote, and I can't. And honestly, even the differences on things like property ownership, you used to have to be a permanent resident or a citizen to own land in Japan, and that's totally not a thing anymore. So the only real advantage of being a permanent resident, I mean, apart from you don't even get to, there is a queue, or basically special permanent residents who are basically Koreans born in Japan. They get to use a special fast queue at the airport, which I don't get to use. There's not really a lot of advantages to it, just other than the fact you don't have to go to La Migra every 2 or 3 years to renew your visa, or ever run the risk of forgetting to update your visa or something like that. So, I think you have that peace of mind that you can live in Japan. It doesn't mean that you have it forever. If you leave Japan, I believe, for a period of more than 12 months without re-entering Japan, your permanent residency can lapse. Which I guess it might be longer than that, actually, but certainly it would be an interesting situation with people maybe being stuck outside of the country during the pandemic with the travel restrictions, if that has caused anyone's permanent residence to lapse. But from my perspective, it gives me peace of mind for my status of being able to live and work in Japan. It means it's not dependent on having a job or being married or all of those. It's just one less thing that's contingent. So that's a good thing. I would actually go for citizenship if it didn't involve renouncing New Zealand citizenship. And New Zealand citizenship, I haven't lived in New Zealand for 24 years. So it doesn't mean a lot to me, honestly, other than it gives options to my son, for example, if he ever wants to travel or exercise any sort of rights as a New Zealander. If there's ever a major disaster here or they suddenly introduce military conscription or something like that. When I was a kid, I had friends who were born in Singapore. New Zealand used to have an army camp there, and the very first thing after they cut the umbilical cord that they do for kids born in Singapore is they changed the citizenship because all Singaporean citizens get called up for military service. And it's ironic, it's funny, we were all army families, but it was being in the army made them all realize that no, they did not want their kids to be subject to mandatory military conscription. So yeah, if you're born in Singapore, you get citizenship by birth if you want it, but everyone changed it because they don't want it, because they don't want to be drafted into the military. Anything like that, I suppose it would be useful to keep the access to New Zealand, so I keep it for my son for that benefit, and I don't feel an overpowering need. The only real advantage of becoming a Japanese citizen really is the ability to vote and participate in politics, and I like Japanese politics, but I'm okay not voting. So yeah, anyway, Dogen gets to be one of us anyway, to the extent that we are a club. It is a growing club. I mean, it's yeah, the number of people with permanent residence, it was almost as rare as people taking up citizenship when I arrived in Japan. But yeah, there's a lot of foreigners now living in Japan for more extended periods of time, and it's totally not weird at all anymore to meet people who have permanent residence. But a big shout out to Dogen. For those of you who don't know Dogen, YouTube channel, the Twitter channel, he is just a genius. He speaks excellent Japanese. He lives down in Kagoshima, I think. But he makes great short videos that are 100% really clever and really funny all the time. Like, you know, I try in 10 hours of live streaming to generate 10 seconds of what he just seems to effortlessly generate every like video that he does. So I highly recommend following him on Twitter and YouTube, and congratulations, Dogen. Yeah, believe me, I can't even fathom how you could not have passed it if that was the case, which I picked up from your last video, if you could have failed it in the past. But if it's ever deserved, well deserved, and well done, Dogen. Anyway, back into the comments. Arak299, no right to vote in Japan for permanent residents. Oh, sorry, I was going to say, some countries allow you to vote, have different rights. I don't think that's the case in America. Certainly not the case in Japan, although it is being debated whether they should allow foreign permanent residents to vote in non-binding referenda in local governments. This was what they were proposing, for example, in Musashino City. I mean, really limited. You can't normally vote, but you can participate in like non-binding referenda, like just opinions of what residents think. And a lot of like all the you know, nationalist rednecks from around the country piled into this, you know, to try to get this vetoed, and it was. The fear, by the way, of this is not fear aimed at people like me. I realize how horrible that sounds as I hear the words coming out my mouth, but that is kind of how it is. Straight up, they're worried about North Koreans and Chinese gaining political leverage, like as a you know, fifth column in different parts of Japan. Particularly, there are some parts of Japan like Osaka and Kyoto that, you know, and Yokohama, for example, that have very large populations of people with citizenship that Japanese nationalists consider to be like natural enemies of Japan, which is ridiculous. These people are residents. They take out, they separate their garbage, you know, they use utilities, you know, they pay rates, so they should have a say. But yeah, there are people who that is what they are afraid of, and it's, you know, we can act superior, but you know, New Zealand, California have pretty shameful laws restricting, out of fear of immigration and giving political power. There's a lot of laws restricting, you know, the rights of racial minorities and foreign immigrants and so on. But yeah, Japan is of that view as well, that you have to be a full citizen. There are, to be fair, there are no restrictions on Chinese people becoming Japanese, but this is partly why they don't allow dual citizenship, because they're worried about people having loyalty to a foreign, you know, state and becoming sort of subversive internally. So you have to renounce your foreign citizenship to become Japanese, which, you know, a lot of people, if you've lived here, if you've been born here, if you've lived your whole life in Japan, it's not such a big deal to do. I mean, for a lot of Koreans, it took them 4 or 5 generations before they, you know, started to let go of that, but now they overwhelmingly are naturalizing. Again, for me, just out of convenience, given that my family's all over the world, I would like to have multiple citizenships, and I don't feel overwhelmingly the need to give it up, but we'll see. Anyway, that's a very good point, IROC299. Seeing if there's any other comments. Kerberos Tenshi says, well, very likely the person writing up the My Melody advice was a middle-aged guy, not a woman. Indeed, I think that was the problem that everybody immediately noticed. But yes, indeed. So I'm going to jump on to the next topic, which is, yeah, not a lot of Japan news this week, to tell you the truth, at least that I've got. I can take requests for topics, of course. Very happy to do that. Oh, also, by the way, just quickly shouting out, some more people have joined the chat. Renman in Japan. Yeah, interesting to see people there also talking about, yeah, indeed, that we can be a little bit vulnerable in our immigration status based on life situation if we're not permanent residents. Indeed. Welcome to the chat, Renman in Japan. Also, great to see Tai Nakamura. Good to see you, Tai Nakamura. Always good to see you there in the chat. Good morning. Is there anyone else? Dan H has made it. Great to see Dan H. Remember, as always, if you want to get my attention in between the stories, I will come back, check out the chat. If you say my name, it will flash up orange, and I will look at that, but I won't read every comment otherwise. So, yeah, do definitely shout me out if you've got a topic that you'd like me to talk about. But most of the other topics I have tonight are actually non-Japan news stories. The first one that I have is interesting that, yeah, Microsoft is buying Activision in a bit on the metaverse. I was a little bit cynical about this when this news came out. I thought that $70 billion for, you know, I mean, as a Atari 2600, you know, console owner, I remember Activision. They were one of the major. I still associate the name Activision with a lot of those games. I know that they actually make Call of Duty and some really, really, you know, top level, current top titles. But I still associate them with Atari 2600. It is still crazy to me that they could be worth $70 billion. And I did joke that maybe they were worth $3 billion. But when they realized they could put the word metaverse on their press release, it became $70 billion. But at the same time, I think it's super interesting. There's so much buzz about this and the way that the Microsoft stock went up and how, you know, Sony stock went down over this acquisition. I still am struggling a little bit with this whole metaverse thing. I saw the Mark Zuckerberg image of the metaverse, where basically, you know, he could live in an animated avatar-based world where everybody was as unanimated as he is in real life. The idea of spending all day like in a Fortnite game, like interacting with coworkers that way instead of like just talking to them over a video link. I mean, it could have some utility. I guess you could have some people who could get into that, but the idea of just the equipment that you need for it, the idea that you have to basically have, for VR, you have to have sensory deprivation. You have to basically cover your eyes and your ears, which essentially means wearing a motorcycle helmet like all day. I mean, even like for games, even for the very best VR experiences, it's fun. It is fun for a couple of games, but ultimately, just for comfort's sake, you are going to take off the headset and pick up the controller and still go back to playing games on the TV. You know, the Oculus does look cool, and I am excited to see and try out these new VR headsets and everything that are coming out. But the idea also that there is going to be a metaverse, it still strikes me as people who read or watched Ready Player One and think that the whole world is going to be, you know, this kind of single, you know, virtual online platform. Truth is, there are tons of metaverses already. I play Fortnite, you know, every day, you know, mostly doing missions and getting XP for my son. There are lots of games, GTA and so on, that have their full immersed worlds that you can go into and interact with other people and, you know, for play. But doing that for work, and calling it the metaverse, I don't get it. I can sort of see. And, you know, I do like the idea of being able to wear a VR headset for that, but I'm not sold on the idea that, you know, the metaverse is something that I feel like, you know, like Google and, you know, a lot of the richest people in the world have all this money, and they're trying to figure out what to put the money into. And, you know, Gates has put the money into basically medicine, and you know, healthcare for the third world. You've got Bezos is, you know, getting into space, as is, of course, Elon Musk. And it seems like Zuckerberg had the same amount of money and everyone else is already doing space. So he just came up with, okay, we're just going to make a big buzz about the metaverse. But it already kind of exists, and I don't know that I want it to be any more in my life than it is. I do like the idea of a set of glasses like these where I could have AR information, where I could basically be able to see a full high resolution monitor like I'm looking at right now, in the same resolution, and be able to read small characters off it, and I can have that pop up wherever I am, just sitting on a train or whatever. I like the idea of having overlays and so on, but the idea of having something like over my whole head like all day and working like that, I don't like that idea at all. I am excited by what might happen with AR and limited VR for like games. But yeah, we'll see. I mean, it does show something perhaps slightly different to that. I think metaverse is just a buzzword. But what Microsoft is doing across all of its business lines is they are throwing everything into cloud-based computing, and I believe that will include not just for enterprise and for applications and so on, and for for Windows and Office and all that sort of thing. It also means for games, and I think this is a big investment into that. The idea that they could have they could have Activision and Xbox games all basically running on Azure somewhere, and be making money from the subscriptions to basically access their stuff from from any type of device. That's kind of cool. Technically very, very hard, but I can understand how this could be something to basically boost their overall cloud position. But I don't know. I'm not sold on this whole metaverse thing. I think it's kind of like it sounds a little bit like a crypto. Honestly, I mean, crypto and NFTs are more credible to me than the idea of spending money on the metaverse. I get the feeling a lot of people are going to be drumming up money on that. I don't like that buzz term. It already exists. So for me, I'm not convinced at that aspect of it. But it's a really interesting acquisition. To me, it is super cool when you think about things like how the Unreal Engine from Epic, what it is doing, the fact that they're making Book of Boba Fett, which is awesome. You should watch it. Oh, I don't know what to do now that The Expanse is finished. That's killing me. The Mandalorian, though, all of these TV shows are basically made. They're not even made with CG. It is CG. But they use Unreal Engine. It's basically they're using a game engine to make amazingly realistic movies. In TV series, like they've got. The Mandalorian looked like the same sort of level of production as the full Star Wars movies, and it's being run on the same game engine that runs Fortnite. And they can basically make a TV series based on that. It's just crazy to me. That stuff is cool. Those game engines. And the way that that's now tying up with movies and computing and so on, that's super cool. I don't know, metaverse. I'm not convinced about the idea that we're all gonna look like little Zuckerberg, Nintendo avatars, and we're gonna work with each other that way. But that's just me. I don't know. I'm curious what people think. What do you think? Leave something in the comments here. Going through one, Johnson says potential topic: my 2022 resolutions or goals. I'll take that one. Let me come back to that. Sergeant Bilko, wonder how they will work out with first day releases for Sony PlayStation. Apparently they're still planning to be on PlayStation for their main titles, but you can imagine that they will probably go exclusive over time. The Master, since Blizzard had a lot of scandals last year, super happy that Microsoft acquired them as a gamer, and you quite enjoy their metaverse stuff like cross-play. Well, I don't know that cross-console is necessarily metaverse. They're talking about metaverse as being a world in which you spend your whole day in a virtual world. But certainly, the cross-platform stuff, that's cloud. That's basically server-based hosting of games, and that's totally a thing, and that is a big part of what this is, and that actually makes more sense. I mean, cloud sounds kind of old now, but that's what Microsoft is still building up. So that part of it is super cool, and that is clearly part of the objective here, which also kind of dooms PlayStation, and frankly, it's going to doom consoles as a whole. You'll sign up for games like you do for Netflix. That's real. Xbox will become an online portal, which they'll probably call a metaverse portal, but it'll just be an online portal that you can access from your mobile device or your computer or whatever, or probably straight from your TV half the time, or your VR headset if you want. But good point, Demaster. And the scandals as well. Again, it shows how much they believe in the technology anyway. Theodore Sharp, we should play together sometime. Yeah, I suck. If you don't mind hanging out with somebody who doesn't build. I play with my son. My son is awesome, but I'm basically just hiding, trying to survive to the end. I literally carry shield potions for my son. If he gets it, I throw the shield potions at him so he can keep going, and I just try not to get hit. That's pretty much my whole strategy. Savage Musician, another topic: quadrilateral security dialogue Quad to be held in Japan regarding regional security. Yeah, I'll come back. Okay, it's another topic. Thank you, Savage Musician. Also good to see you there in the topics. Cobra Tenchi, College Humor made a video about why, even with VR, Beat Saber is the best lightsaber Star Wars experience game. I should look that up. I don't know exactly what that is. Quint Rankett, how about a direct neural connection instead of a helmet? Sure. I love Black Mirror, and I want all the stuff that is featured on that show, even with all the dystopian outcomes. All in. Yeah. Give me that little thing I put on the back of my head that records all my memories, and yeah, I'll take that any day if that becomes possible. Andrew, Andrew, I see, very, very clever. Good to have you with us in the chat there. And if Sword Art Online Lock Horizon is taught us anything, fully immersive VR is dangerous. I don't know anything about that, but yeah. The master really is just a buzzword, as I say, but yeah, I think there are exactly. Microsoft gets heavily played franchises into their description. That's exactly it. That I get. At least up to about 3 billion. 70 billion, I'm not quite sure I get, but sure, they see it as a strategic investment. Quint Rankett, all those platforms raise some interesting portability issues, like when, like they say about the coffee name thing. Write once, test everywhere. Sure, I mean, that's already happening. The master, sorry for the many tags, but in your opinion, game streaming can't replace consoles in the next 10 years. Believe me, I work in I work in that field, and you're probably right. I know that they're struggling. The idea of game streaming works, but again, when you're talking about the kind of latency required for credible gaming, the fact that people are buying 360 megahertz monitors because they somehow, I don't believe that any human being has reactions that rely on 1/360th of a second, but people are buying monitors that can handle that, and setting up computers that can handle that just in case. So the idea of doing that over a network where the server is located like 1,000 miles away, yeah, that's like speed of light. You would even notice delays within those sort of parameters. So yeah, I think that you are actually on the money there. It's absolutely, if the server is located, or they figure out ways to set up edge servers that are really, really close and well configured to where the gamers are in certain, like in Tokyo, it might be possible. But the idea that someone, in Tonga is going to be able to play, stream games credibly, like with the reaction times, yeah, it's a big problem actually. Sorry, part of what I do, and it is a hard problem, but it's a problem worth solving, obviously. So yeah, BTC Chiba, by the way, good to see you in there. Okay, let's go back for the topic suggestions. One Johnson, my 2022 resolutions or goals. Yeah, I haven't set any really overly ambitious ones. In fact, actually, surprised, now that I think about it, quite boring ones. The big one, I suppose, is I just want to keep my weight. I want to improve on my score on my Kenko Shindan, on my health checkup. And I'm failing at that so far. It's just cold. I'm not exercising as much. And I am, I don't know, retaining water or something. And my weight isn't going down like it was before. But pretty much just being healthy is the main one. I think it's the most important goal I have right now. I mean, I would have goals of going and visiting my dad in New Zealand and getting to Australia and doing all sorts of other things. But right now, it's hard to have goals when you're tied up at home. I do definitely, obviously, just want to keep this going, but I don't know that continuing doing what I'm doing, which is the same with the health, by the way, it really constitutes a resolution. So nothing that significant. Continuing to just adapt to the world that we are in. I would love to do another sort of project like my Chan TV or something like that, but I'm still recovering from how much time that took out of me. So I guess I've got some sort of lower scale goals for work and so on, and I would love to get out and see more people. What I would really love is it's more, rather than a 2022 goal, I will say that I have a 2022 ambition for a pandemic ending ambition that I would really love to do, like a tweet up or a meetup. I've never done that really, at least around this channel. But I've been surprised when I've been to Brisbane, I've been to other places, and I've said, hey, let's do a meetup, and I was surprised at who showed up. There'd be like 10 people that would show up in Brisbane. I mean, that's a good, and in Seattle as well. So I've never actually done that in Tokyo. I don't know. It's not modesty. It's I was actually shocked. I never even thought that there would be that many people that would get together. But we interact like this all the time, and I enjoy that. So I would really love to do. When I go back to seeing like the humans, you are the humans I interact with outside of coworkers the most actually. So I would actually love to do some kind of a low scale meet up somewhere in Tokyo. That's definitely something I want to do, but I don't know when that's going to be, and I'm not going to set a goal in 2022. It's hard to set goals for 2022, right? So Clint Rankin, I googled that, and it was quite a fun rabbit hole to go down the Brandon stuff. Savas musician, quadrilateral security dialogue, the quad to be held. Now remind me, the quad is Japan. Oh, that timed out, is Japan, America, Australia, and India, right? I'll be honest, I would love for India to reach its potential in terms of engagement in the global economy and global, security infrastructure and everything else. And everyone wants it to be in there because it's democratic. They speak English. They have a surprisingly, for their size, they have a surprisingly, low level of participation in international institutions. They do participate a lot in UN peacekeeping for what it's worth, but their military, in spite of having 1 billion people, it's mostly just focused on, the Pakistan and so on. And I don't know, I suppose India has a kind of a mistrust of international trade systems, or that seems to come out mainly through its really, really awful history of colonialism, of getting absolutely screwed by the British Empire for so long. And most people in Britain not realizing how that was the case and how that mistrust is there, completely oblivious to it. But yeah, I think that fosters the kind of domestic nationalism within India. The anti-colonialism thing was basically coming up and prioritizing Indians over always sending money out of the country. And I think that is behind the skepticism about both trade and engagement. Again, Indians were really prominent as empire soldiers in World War II. And good soldiers, but again, they were always out dying and fighting in international spheres for their colonizer. And the big selling point of independence for India was, of course, not dying for other countries anymore, just looking after yourself. It kind of made them isolationist. And while I understand, I don't know if I understand it perfectly. I'm not any sort of an expert on India. I'm at the same time, I really wish, like America, when I see America becoming more isolationist, I really wish that it wouldn't be. To me, it looks more like a framework for something. I wish it would be more impactful than it is. I really think, the most sustained, ideologically engaged partner in the Quad is Australia. But Australia has a population smaller than Greater Tokyo. It's it's geographically large, and it throws a lot of weight around on the international stage. But the idea that Australia is even at the same table as the United States and Japan and India is kind of ridiculous. Look at it's got the same population as Taiwan, so that doesn't kind of make sense, except they do have a lot of military power, and they are willing to go overseas and to team up with other countries. That's true. I mean, New Zealand is as well. So I don't know, it's just mysterious to me. And the US is all over the place. It's swinging back and forth between isolationism and multilateralism, and it hasn't gone back to multilateralism. Biden hasn't done that. Which is extremely disappointing to me. But again, same as with India. I understand if Americans are tired of fighting everyone else's wars all the time and having their kids go die. Yeah, I get that. And I also get that when the economy is tough, that you want to prioritize local jobs. That's exactly the same thing in India. At the end of the day, you need people who can explain the big vision, and they can't really do that. So both from security, I don't see a credible, deterrent being put forward anywhere at the moment against China. And I think China is looking really, really with interest at what's happening in Europe to see if the United States is going to be willing to do anything to discourage or punish the United States, Russia doing anything in Ukraine. And I don't really see real deterrent. Everyone seems to have almost accepted that Russia's going to invade. So I think the Quad should be a lot more effective than it is. I suppose it's good. It could become something. It's good that they're talking. But I really think that the perspectives and interests and everything of all four members at the moment are so far apart. I mean, the fact that Japan can't go anywhere, the fact that India still basically is, changes its mind at the last minute about participating, like in things like RCEP. The fact that the United States is back to being more multilateralist lately, but I want it to be more effective than it is, and I hope that it becomes that way, and I hope it becomes a sort of stable, reliable infrastructure, and it should have more than just Australia. Frankly, it should have ASEAN countries in it as well, although ASEAN countries themselves have a lot to come up in terms of both military and democratic credentials. But yeah, we'll see. That's my view on that anyway. It's a good question, Savas Musician. Thank you for it. More comments in here, by the way. Let me go back down here. Quentin Rankid, but India is going a little crazy nationalist at the moment. Well, a lot of countries are going crazy nationalist in the last few years. I don't think India particularly stands out, but yes, the populism. I mean, Modi is like again, from my very superficial understanding, is like a Trump of India, and it's the same kind of forces. It's the same kind of although the isolationist forces in India have been there for a lot longer. Quentin Rankid, Australia, it has a strategically important position. Yeah, it kind of does, but again, you have to remember, I do wonder how much of the perceived strategic significance of Australia, frankly, comes down to the idea that they're white. And they act on the world stage like they're part of the British Empire and they're running the world when they're really not. I mean, they're next to a country of 200 million people, and yet, I mean, Australia, it's to their credit, I suppose, that they probably do exercise as much or more influence on the international stage than Indonesia does. But that's objectively ridiculous. Indonesia is richer; it's got 10 times more people. And to me, it just kind of feels a little bit off. And I say this as a half Australian myself. It's weird that, in 100 years ago, Australia was quite open. In fact, in 1919, in the League of Nations charter, the initial charter of human rights, they were quite open that they didn't think that non-white people should have the same rights on the international stage as white people. I mean, they actually vetoed the racial equality. Australia was one of the countries that lobbied it. Now, that's obviously gone now. Obviously, that Australia doesn't think like that anymore. That's 100 years ago. But, the results are still kind of the same, and that is still kind of weird, right? So, like I say, countries like Indonesia should have should be far more relevant than Australia is, but for, various reasons. It feels like a colonial legacy, frankly, that Australia has such disproportionate influence. But it is funny, in that quad, they do deserve a seat at the table, even though that is weird. That's my point. Yay, Australia. No worries. Russia will only invade Ukraine a little bit, and then that will lead to harsh language. The other worry is that China will go for Taiwan at the same time. They will not go for Taiwan at the same time. They'll go for the 9-dash line, and maybe they'll try on the Senkakus and stuff like that. They're not going to jump on Taiwan. They've got the great thing about not having democracy is you don't have 3-year terms to get things done. They'll play a much longer game with Taiwan. I'm not worried about that right now. But yeah, Quentin Rankid, Australia is part of Five Eyes. So is New Zealand. So believe me, Australia looks far more, and so is Canada. I mean, holy crap, Canada. Canada doesn't even have a special air service regiment. They're not even trusted by Britain to have a full, special forces regiment, and yet they're in the Five Eyes. So, you talk about a colonial white people ruling, Anglo-Saxons ruling the world club. I mean, Five Eyes is exactly that. Yeah, they do have minerals. Certainly, they do. They have that. And believe me, they know that. It is why Australia is the lucky country. But indeed, they do have I believe, disproportionate influence. And it's to their credit. They can be proud of that, but it shouldn't last. The world 50 years ago, if Australia has the same amount of influence that it has now, something's gone very wrong with the world. TP, actually, despite Indonesia having a much larger population, Australia's nominal GDP is 50% bigger than Australia. Well, that's my point. And look, of course, I'm not an expert on Indonesia any more than I am than Japan, than I am on India. But, Indonesia has enormous wealth. Of course, it suffered from corruption and misrule and dictatorship and all that sort of stuff. But again, when it can get, and from misrule and colonialism by the Dutch that looted the country as well. And believe me, and look, you look at Timor. Look at how Australia's treated East Timor. I mean, the idea that it's not still subject to outside colonialist influences. I mean, that's happening right now. The stuff with how Timor is being screwed over its own natural resources by Australia. But when everything equals out, obviously, Indonesia should enjoy a GDP, at least on a total basis. Much bigger than Australia's, even if not 10 times. The fact Australia has is double Indonesia's right now is just crazy. So yeah. Savas musician, East Timor, August 99, they needed a few extra Asian faces to make it digestible. It was. And look, and that was complicated as well, because obviously Indonesia were kind of being to East Timor exactly as the Dutch and Australia were being. But, Australia's just kind of, they're not doing great things there at the moment. So, yeah, Canada will send in the Mounties and the Mounties and the County Mounties. Cobra Stingy, doesn't Australia also have some of the largest reserves of... Hey, they have the largest reserves of everything. They have uranium, they have aluminium. Australia has everything. And they, believe me, Australia has so much aluminium, I'm surprised that America doesn't pronounce it correctly still. But, yeah, that's Australia. So, also Russian virus bot. No one click on what that person just put there. The JVlog, salutations, good to have you in here. Wow, we've come up on an hour. I don't know how this is going to sound as an audio podcast, but there again, I guess anyone who watches the show knows what to expect. I'm just going to go through the final few stories at rapid pace. Oh wow, well fortunately there weren't a lot of stories tonight, although yes. This as well, not a lot of stuff on Japan, but I just thought this was super cool that in 2024 we are sending a machine to the moon that's going to try to figure out how to convert regolith, the sand and dust on the moon, how to melt it down and create metals. That is super cool for so many reasons, and I don't understand how we are not doing this like all over the place. I mean, talk about like Australia. This is like if we should be giving Australia a space program, we should be sending them to the moon and having them teach us how to dig holes and get rich from it. And this is what you should be doing. You should be creating metals on the moon, which you can use not only, and that's not cool just for like building like moon bases. That's cool because, you can launch like stuff into space from the moon way cheaper. There was less gravity. So of course, if you want to build a huge space station, the cost of sending like material up into orbit to be able to build a space station or a spaceship to go to Mars is going to be enormously cheaper to do if you can get the stuff from the moon instead of Earth. I mean, obviously on Earth we have the ability to mine and process and prepare it all, but to lift it up into space is so expensive. And from the moon, I mean, you could practically catapult the stuff into space. You could probably use railguns to put the stuff into orbit up there. You don't even need rocket fuel. And yeah, so the fact that they're figuring out how to finally start getting metals in situ on the moon, to me is like, that's like really for the idea of having like mass human presence in space, having enormous, having Mars bases and large moon bases and O'Neill cylinders where people live, like in the movie Elysium or whatever. I want that stuff, and I want that stuff while I'm alive, and this is how you get it. And, granted, they're just going to be putting probably a little probe on there and they're just going to be melting some bits of sand in the beginning, but do it faster. Geez, put robots on there that replicate and do that all over the place there. To me, that's like, this is super exciting. This is like self-driving cars to me. This is something that's going to really change everything, and I can't believe we're not doing it faster already. Barry Bonds, good to see you there in the chat. Yes, we've got a couple more. I love this as well. I love science stuff. There's a science story that, again, someone's found a new oldest human skull from Ethiopia. In fact, they didn't find a new skull. They just redated it, and they found that by dating the soil and the ash where in the layer of sediment where the skull was found in southern Ethiopia, they figured out that it's a little bit older than they thought it was. It's 233,000 years old. Now, 233,000 years doesn't sound very recent, but when you remember the Earth is 4.5 billion years old, and you think that life is basically about 500 billion years, 233,000 years for the first recognizable human skull, that's not very long ago. What I love about this, in fact, I'll get out the calculator right now, because I want to say the number precisely, but if you assume that people have babies, basically, throughout the human history, from when we were, living in caves and whatnot. People are basically around the average generation was 20, let's just say. So you take this number, 233,000, and you presume that every generation is from 20 years. That means that between any one of us here in the chat and this Ethiopian man or woman that they've just dated the skull, there are 11,650 ancestors, people between. If I wanted to put them all in a room, I mean, I've lived in towns with around that population. That's a very visible number. And if you consider the time from, for example, when human civilization is considered to have started around 10,000 years ago, I mean, you're talking like less than 1,000 people between me. I've been to a school with 2,000 boys, and it's like 2,000 generations going back to 10,000 years ago. The number of people, the number of steps between me and that person in Ethiopia is only 10,000 people. I don't know if any of you and while 230,000 years is hard to visualize, it's very easy to visualize what 10,000 people looks like. You go to a sports stadium, most sports stadiums, that'd be a pretty empty stadium of people. And, they are all of your ancestors connecting you to that person in Ethiopia, basically, who is the single point joining Neanderthals and, Denisovians and all those other types of humans that didn't work out. I find that incredible. And whenever I think about this, whenever I think about the history of human genetics, it shows how absurd the idea of ethno-nationalism and centrism is. I mean, any race that exists today, is probably just formed just from being under certain very specific conditions for a couple of thousand years at the most. And you think about that in terms of generations, like that becomes meaningless within just a couple of dozen generations. It's totally ridiculous to have an idea that people are somehow different people entirely when you think that all people in the world, everybody's got basically 10,000 generations between them and the skull in Ethiopia of all of us. So anyway, I love that. I think that's super cool. Also, classic Korea troll. The Korean presidential office sent presents to New Year's greeting presents apparently to not just Japan, but apparently all the local foreign delegations, including the Japan embassy. And apparently the present contained a card which had a shot of the Takeshima Islands like this, saying Happy New Year from Korea, featuring Tokto, Takeshima Island from Shimane Prefecture. You know that someone's very, very secure about their sense of ownership of something when they feel the need to constantly assert that it's theirs, even when no one's asking the question. Like Japan doesn't really do very much about this, but they look very, very insecure, the fact that they keep. I mean, look, if you accept the Korean arguments that Tokdo is just a natural and ancient part of Korea, just like any other part of Korea, like Jeju Island or Seoul, then great, put Jeju Island on the postcard. Why is it always Tokdo? It is, it's just a screw you to Japan to make them feel slightly less insecure about their rights to have it because they stole it in 1953. They would argue taking it back, but it is a bit of a troll. The Japanese embassy, for what it's worth, sent the present back. But yeah, classic troll. That is it for all the topics tonight. Final look at the comments. Quint Rankid, what do you mean the others didn't work out? Neanderthals are still here. I'm still here. Well, we inherited Neanderthal DNA, or at least people outside of Africa did. Not everybody has Neanderthal DNA, by the way, and those of us that have it only have trace amounts, like 1 or 2%. But sure. By the way, thank you for the. But as a complete population, they didn't work out, right? There are no longer. I still love the idea, by the way, that the old, like the ancient tales. This is the thing as well, like the Grimm's fairy tales and so on. The stories about trolls and sort of ogres and stuff like that. There are people who think that this could have been passed on oral traditions from the times when people went into Europe for the first time from the Middle East. I remember the Europeans went basically from Africa through the Middle East into Europe, and some went into Central Asia and came back off the steppe basically as Mongolian hordes, and they went into Europe and they met these these Neanderthals who were put together very different, and they coexisted for a long time, and there are a lot of thoughts. So this could just be oral tradition of remembering what it was like being around Neanderthals. And yeah, it seems that a few of them bonked and good. You know, now they've got some of us as well. But you know, I find that that's it seems really ancient and remote, but when you realize how few generations there are, like there's like a basketball stadium, 10,000 people, right? Worth of people between us and and them. It's very easy to understand how stories could totally be passed down, still, even before writing, even before civilization, and this could be in the human memory. I love that stuff. Like I said, it just shows how ridiculous it is to look at people in such narrow frames as some like to do, out of insecurity that they don't need to have. But yeah. So very good point, Quint Rankin. You are correct. All of that stuff. Anyway, have a good week, everybody. Do stay safe. The Rona is, of course, everywhere, and it's getting worse. Tonga is in a terrible situation. Great to see the international community jumping in to get them food and water and all the things that they need. Tonga, the most generous donor of aid to Japan per capita. The most generous foreign aid donor to Japan after 3/11 was apparently was Taiwan, but per capita or per GDP per capita was Tonga. It's a great country of great people. Growing up in New Zealand, I grew up around a lot of Tongan people in my high school and so on. I hope that things are getting better there. I hope that you are all doing well and staying safe from COVID. Do take care of yourself. I have nowhere else to go. I will be back here next Sunday at 10:30 p.m. Japan Standard Time, as I always am. Follow me on Twitter if you want to follow me on Twitter. If you want to just catch this show or subscribe in future to the audio podcast, do check in and say hello on the show. It's something I enjoy. But if you want to check out the audio version, probably tomorrow, about 12 hours from now, the audio version should go up on Anchor FM, or is it Anchor.com? Let me just check that. It will be on Anchor FM, anchor.fm, /HikoSimon, easy to find. So do go and follow that as well. I will see if I can make it coherent. Have a good week, everybody. Stay safe. Peace. Boom. Any stream.